The transport ship's doors opened with a hiss and stepped onto Nexus Prime for the first time. The station was massive, stretching out in all directions like a small city floating in space. Lights flickered along the metal walls, and the air smelled strange, like chemicals mixed with something he couldn't identify. Pulled his travel bag over his shoulder and walked down the ramp. He was here for business, nothing more. Earth needed mining rights to the asteroid fields near this sector, and he was the merchant chosen to negotiate the deal. It should have been simple. But nothing was ever simple when other species were involved. The main hall of the station was crowded. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the space. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others on 4 or 6. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few seemed to be made of something that looked like living crystal. Had studied many species before coming here, but seeing them all together was different than reading about them in reports. He made his way toward the registration desk, trying not to stare. A few aliens glanced at him as he passed. Their eyes lingered a moment too long and could see the curiosity in their faces. Some looked amused, others looked almost disgusted. "Another human," someone said in a language translator quickly converted. "They let anyone in here now." Kept walking. He had dealt with prejudice before. Humans were new to the galactic community, only joining 50 years ago. They were still proving themselves, still trying to earn respect among species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. At the registration desk, a thin alien with purple skin and 4 arms processed his credentials. "Merchant from Earth," the alien read from the screen. "Here for negotiation purposes. Your quarters are in Section 7, Level 3. Try not to cause trouble." "I won't," said simply. The alien handed him a key card. "Good, the don't like troublemakers." Stomach tightened at the name. He had read about them too. They were the dominant species on this station, a warrior race that valued strength and combat ability above everything else. They stood nearly 9 feet tall, covered in thick scales that could stop most weapons. Their teeth were sharp, their claws sharper, and their reputation was the sharpest of all. He found his quarters and dropped off his bag. The room was small but clean, with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out into space. Stood there for a moment, watching the stars. Earth was so far away now. He wondered if he had made a mistake coming here. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he said. The door slid open and a woman stepped inside. She was human, short like him, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. "You must be," she said with a smile. I work in the science division here." "Nice to meet you," said, shaking her hand. Smile faded a bit. "I heard you're here to negotiate mining rights. I wanted to warn you about something." Exactly." Sat down on the edge of his desk. "They control most of the resources in this sector. If you want those mining rights, you'll need their approval, and they don't respect humans." "Why not?" "Because we're small, we're weak compared to them. They're hunters, warriors. They respect physical strength and combat skill. They think we're soft." Looked at him seriously. "They've rejected every human proposal that's come through here in the last 3 years." Felt frustration building in his chest. "Then why did Earth send me?" "Because you're good at what you do, and because we're running out of options." Stood up. "Just be careful. Don't let them push you around, but don't challenge them either. It's a fine line." "I'll manage," said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. The next day, went to the central trading hall. It was a huge room with a ceiling that seemed to disappear into darkness above. Tables and booths filled the space, with merchants and traders from dozens of species making deals and exchanging goods. Found an empty table and set up his data pad. He reviewed the proposal one more time, making sure everything was in order. The mining rights Earth wanted were fair. The payment was generous. There was no reason for them to refuse. Unless they wanted to refuse just because he was human. "Is this seat taken?" Looked up and his blood went cold. Standing over him was easily 8.5 feet tall. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his eyes were golden with slit pupils like a snake. He wore armor that looked both ceremonial and functional, with markings that indicated high rank. "No," said, keeping his voice steady. "Please sit." The sat down and the chair groaned under his weight. He stared at for a long moment, then smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "I am leader of the trading guild. You must be the human merchant." "My name is," said the name like it tasted bad. "You want mining rights to the fields." "Yes, I have a proposal that I think will benefit both our people." Laughed a deep rumbling sound. "Benefit? What could humans possibly offer us? Your ships are slow, your weapons are weak, your bodies are fragile." He leaned forward. "Tell me, why should they do business with a species that can barely defend itself?" Other aliens at nearby tables had stopped talking. They were watching now, waiting to see what would happen. Felt anger rising but pushed it down, had warned him about this. "Strength isn't just about size or weapons," he said carefully. "Earth has resources, technology, and determination. We may not be the biggest, but we're survivors." "Survivors," laughed again, and several other nearby joined in. "That is what prey calls themselves before they are eaten." The laughter spread through the hall. Felt his face burning with shame, but he held his ground. He wouldn't give the satisfaction of seeing him break. "The proposal stands," said quietly. "When you're ready to discuss it seriously, you know where to find me." He stood up and walked away, feeling dozens of eyes on his back. The laughter followed him all the way to the door. Back in his quarters, sat in the dark, staring out at the stars again. This was going to be harder than he thought, much harder. But he didn't come all this way to give up. What didn't know was that someone else had been watching the exchange in the trading hall. High above, in a private observation deck, another stood in the shadows. This one was larger than older, with scars covering his scales and eyes that had seen countless battles. His name was, and he was the of the people. He had killed more prey than any warrior alive. He had survived alone on death worlds. He was legend among his kind. And as he watched the small human walk away with his head held high despite the humiliation, felt something he hadn't felt in many years. "Interest? Perhaps," he said softly to himself, "there is more to this human than meets the eye." 3 days passed, and situation grew worse. Every meeting he scheduled was canceled. Every contact he tried to make led nowhere. Had spread word throughout the station that humans were not to be trusted, that they were too weak to be reliable partners. Sat in the station's cafeteria, picking at food he couldn't identify. Sat across from him, her face full of sympathy. "I'm sorry," she said. "I warned you about, but I didn't think he'd go this far." "It's not your fault," pushed his plate away. "I just don't understand why he hates humans so much." "It's not hate exactly," a new voice said. Looked up to see another human approaching their table. He was older than maybe 40, with gray starting to show in his hair. "Mind if I join you?" "Please," said. The man sat down and extended his hand. "I mean you. I've been trading on this station for 5 years now." 5 years? Was surprised. "I thought no human had successfully done business here." "I didn't say successfully," Minyu smiled sadly. "I've made a few small deals here and there, but nothing major. They won't allow it. To them, we're beneath notice. Not because they hate us, but because we haven't proven ourselves worthy of respect." "How are we supposed to prove ourselves if they won't even talk to us?" Minyu was about to answer when a loud voice echoed through the cafeteria. "Human of Earth." The room fell silent, turned to see standing in the doorway, flanked by 2 other warriors. "I am here," said, standing up. Walked toward him, his heavy footsteps making the floor vibrate. "You have offended the honor of the trading guild by suggesting we are unreasonable. You have questioned our judgment." "I did no such thing," said firmly. I only asked for fair consideration of my proposal." "Fair?" Eyes narrowed. "You want fairness. Then I offer you a chance to prove your worth, the trial of shadows." Murmurs spread through the cafeteria. Saw fear flash across his face. "What is the trial of shadows?" asked. "An ancient tradition," explained, his smile showing too many teeth. "You will enter the hunting grounds and survive for 48 hours. You must retrieve 3 honor markers from different zones. If you succeed, they will grant you 1 meeting to present your proposal. If you fail," he shrugged, "well, few survive failure." "That's insane," stood up. "Isn't a warrior, he's a merchant. The trial is designed for hunters." "Then perhaps he should not have come to a station," said coldly. He looked back at, "What is your answer, human? Or will you run back to Earth with your tail between your legs?" Every eye in the cafeteria was on now. He could feel the weight of their stares, the expectation of his failure. Part of him wanted to refuse, to tell exactly what he thought of this stupid trial. But another part, the part that had driven him to travel across the galaxy in the first place, wouldn't let him back down. "I accept," said. The room erupted in shocked whispers, looked surprised for just a moment before his smile returned. "Excellent. The trial begins at dawn tomorrow. Prepare yourself, human. You will need every advantage you can find." After left Grab's arm. "Are you crazy? Do you know what the hunting grounds are like?" "No," admitted, "but I'm about to find out." Minyu stood up slowly. "Come with me. If you're really doing this, I can at least help you prepare." For the next several hours, Minyu showed everything he knew about hunting tactics. They went to Minyu's quarters, where he had collected data over the years. "They are ambush predators," Minyu explained, showing videos on his data pad. "They're incredibly strong and fast in short bursts. They rely on their natural weapons, their claws and teeth, and overwhelming force." "How does that help me?" asked. "Because you're Nada, you can't beat them at their own game." Minyu pulled up another file. "Humans evolved differently. We're not ambush predators, we're persistence hunters." "Meaning?" "Meaning we outlast our prey. We're not the fastest or the strongest, but we can keep going when other predators have to stop and rest. We can track, we can plan, we can adapt." Minyu looked at him seriously. "In the hunting grounds, don't try to fight like a human." Spent the rest of the day studying the limited information available about the. It was a massive enclosed environment that simulated different alien ecosystems. It contained predators from a dozen worlds, each one deadly in its own way. That night barely slept. He lay in his bed thinking about what awaited him. He thought about Earth, about his family, about whether he would ever see them again. When dawn came, a guard arrived to escort him to the entrance, and Minyu were waiting there, along with a crowd of station inhabitants. It seemed everyone wanted to watch the human fail. Stood near the entrance, his arms crossed. "Any final words, human?" "Just one question," said. "Where are the honor markers?" "You'll know them when you see them," said with a laugh, "if you live long enough." The massive door to the began to open. Could see darkness beyond, and he could hear sounds, animal sounds that made his skin crawl. Stepped forward and hugged him quickly. "Be smart, be careful, come back alive." "I will," promised, hoping it was true. Minyu handed him a small pack. Basic supplies. Water purification tablets, some medical supplies, a knife. It's not much, but it's all they allow. "Thank you," said. He turned toward the open door. His heart was pounding, his hands were shaking, but his feet were steady. He took a deep breath and walked forward into the darkness. Behind him, the door slammed shut with a sound like thunder. High above, in the observation room, dozens of aliens watched on screens as disappeared into the. They placed bets on how long he would survive. Most gave him less than 6 hours. Watched with satisfaction. This human had embarrassed him, questioned him. Now he would die, and that would be the end of it. But in the back of the observation room, standing alone in shadow, watched with different eyes. He saw the way the human walked, steady despite fear. He saw the small pack, carefully organized. He saw someone who understood he was outmatched but chose to fight anyway. "Interesting," murmured. "Very interesting indeed." The trial had begun. The first thing noticed inside though was the heat. It hit him like a wall, thick and humid, making his clothes stick to his skin immediately. The second thing was the smell, a mixture of rotting vegetation and something else, something that smelled like danger. He waited for his eyes to adjust to the dim light. Artificial suns hung far above, providing just enough illumination to see by. The terrain around him was jungle, thick with plants that looked nothing like earth vegetation. Some had leaves the size of tables, others had trunks covered in sharp thorns. Checked his pack. Water purification tablets, basic medical supplies, a small knife, and a compact emergency beacon that would only work if he gave up and quit the trial. He wouldn't be using that. He needed to move, to find the first honor marker before something found him. The first hour was quiet, almost too quiet. Moved carefully through the jungle, trying to make as little noise as possible. He had no idea what kind of predators lived here, but he knew they would be listening. He was right. The attack came without warning. Something burst from the undergrowth to his left, a blur of gray fur and flashing teeth. Threw himself to the side, barely avoiding the creature's lunge. He hit the ground hard, rolled, and came up running. Behind him, he heard more of them. A pack. Their howls echoed through the jungle, and realized these must be the blade wolves Minu had mentioned. They hunted in groups, using coordination and speed to bring down prey much larger than themselves. Ran, his heart hammering in his chest. He couldn't outrun them forever. He needed a plan. He spotted a clearing ahead, and in the center of it stood a structure, a tall post with something glowing at the top. The first honor marker. But between him and the marker the ground changed. It became soft, wet, a swamp. Didn't hesitate. He plunged into the swamp, the water rising to his waist. The blade wolves skidded to a stop at the edge, snarling and packing. They wouldn't enter the water. Because something else lived there. Saw ripples moving toward him. Something big was coming. He pushed forward, forcing his legs through the thick mud. The honor marker was close now, maybe 30 feet away. The ripples got closer. Grabbed a vine hanging from a nearby tree and pulled hard. It held. He wrapped it around his arm and kept moving, slower now, trying not to make too much noise or disturbance in the water. Something brushed against his leg. Grabbed the vine with both hands and pulled himself up just as something massive surged beneath him. He caught a glimpse of scales and teeth before he was swinging over the water, the vine carrying him toward the marker post. He let go at the right moment and landed hard on solid ground. Behind him, the swamp erupted as some kind of enormous reptile breached the surface, snapping at empty air where he had been. Grabbed the honor marker from the post. It was a small metal disc, glowing with a faint blue light. He clipped it to his belt and ran, leaving the swamp and the blade wolves behind. In the observation room, aliens stared at the screens in surprise. The human had survived the first test. Barely. Lucky, muttered, pure luck. Said nothing, but his eyes never left the screen. The second zone was different. The jungle gave way to rocky terrain, full of cliffs and caves. Was exhausted already, his clothes soaked with swamp water and sweat, but he couldn't stop. He had to find the second marker. He found it in the worst possible place, inside a cave deep in the rocks. And guarding the cave entrance was something that made the blade wolves look small. It was massive, easily 12 feet tall, with thick armored hide that looked like it could stop bullets. It had 4 legs like tree trunks and a head that was mostly mouth. The creature was sleeping, blocking the cave entrance completely. Crouched behind a rock and studied the situation. He couldn't fight that thing. Even with weapons, it would be suicide. But the honor marker was inside that cave. He looked around, searching for options. Above the cave, the cliff face was unstable. He could see cracks in the rock, loose stones barely held in place. An idea formed. Climbed carefully up the side of the cliff, moving slowly to avoid making noise. His muscles burned with effort, and his hands were cut from the sharp rocks, but he kept going. When he reached the unstable section, he braced himself and began to push. The first boulder didn't move, neither did the second, but the third one shifted slightly. Pushed harder, using all his strength. The boulder moved more, teetering on the edge. Below, the armored beast stirred in its sleep. Gave one final push, and the boulder toppled over the edge. It struck another rock on the way down, which struck another, and suddenly half the cliff face was sliding down. The creature woke up with a roar, but it was too late. Tons of rock crashed down on top of it, burying it under the avalanche. When the dust settled, the cave entrance was partially blocked, but there was enough space for someone human-sized to squeeze through. Climbed down and entered the cave. Inside, surrounded by bones that he tried not to look at too closely, he found the second honor marker. He grabbed it and left quickly, not wanting to be there when the creature dug itself out. In the observation room, the crowd was larger now. Word had spread that the human was still alive, still moving. More aliens came to watch, curious about this small creature that refused to die. "He's using tricks," one alien said, "not real hunting." "He's using his brain," another replied. "That's his weapon." Leaned forward, his eyes intense. "This is not weakness," he said quietly. "This is how true hunters survive." The other looked at him in confusion but didn't explain. He simply watched. Night fell in the artificial suns dimmed, plunging the environment into darkness. Found a sheltered spot between some rocks and made camp. His hands shook as he cleaned his wounds with supplies from his pack. He had cuts, bruises, and his muscles screamed with exhaustion. He'd been moving for over 12 hours straight. But he had 2 markers, just one more to go. As he sat in the darkness, eating the small amount of ration bar he allowed himself, thought about what Minu had said. Fight like a human, don't try to be a. He wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the fastest, but he could think, he could adapt, he could endure. Somewhere in the station, Sola sat at her communication console. She wasn't supposed to help, it was against the rules of the trial, but she had access to this layout, to the sensor data. She made a decision. Her fingers moved quickly across her keyboard, sending encrypted data to a frequency she knew some emergency beacon could receive. Updated maps, predator movement patterns, the location of the third marker. If anyone found out, she'd lose her job. But watching that human fight alone against impossible odds, she couldn't just do nothing. In his shelter's beacon beeped softly. He pulled it out and saw the incoming data. His eyes widened. Someone was helping him. He loaded the data into his pack's simple computer and studied it. The third marker was in the apex predator zone, the most dangerous area of the. Lay back against the rock and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would be even harder than today. But he would survive it, he had to. Because humans didn't give up, they never gave up. Woke before the artificial dawn. His body hurt in ways he didn't know were possible. Every muscle ached, his cuts burned, and his head pounded from dehydration despite the water he'd purified. But he was alive, and he had one more marker to find. He checked the data Sola had sent him. The third honor marker was in a zone labeled territory. Even the name sounded dangerous. The journey there took 3 hours. Moved slower now, conserving his energy. He had learned the rhythm of learned when to hide and when to move. Several times he heard predators nearby, but he avoided them by staying downwind and moving quietly. The apex predator zone was different from the rest of the air felt heavier here, charged with tension. The other animals avoided this area. Even the insects were quiet. Found tracks in the soft earth. They were huge, each footprint as long as his forearm, with claw marks that dug deep into the ground. Whatever made these tracks was something he didn't want to meet. According to Sola's data, the third marker was near a rock formation ahead. Approached carefully, every sense alert. That's when he saw It was the size of an earth elephant, but built like a tiger. Black scales covered its body, and its eyes glowed with a faint red light. 6 legs gave it incredible stability and speed. Its tail was long and tipped with what looked like a blade made of bone. And it was sleeping right next to the rock formation, where the marker should be. His heart sank. There was no way to sneak past that thing, no way to trick it like he'd tricked the armored beast. This creature was too smart, too alert, even in sleep. He was about to try anyway when he noticed something else. Behind deeper in its lair, small shapes moved. Cubs. There was a mother protecting her young. Stopped, he thought about the creature, about what it was doing. Protecting family. He understood that. He respected it. He looked at the data again, studying the terrain more carefully. The marker wasn't just at this location. There was a secondary access point, a narrow passage that led around this lair from a different direction. But that passage was guarded by something else. According to the sensors, a different predator patrolled that area, something that moved in regular patterns like it was packing. Made his way around the rock formation, moving slowly. It took him an hour to get into position. Finally, he saw the other predator. It was smaller than maybe the size of a large bear. It had thick fur and moved on 4 powerful legs. Every few minutes it would pace the same path, then stop and sniff the air, then pace again. Watched it for a long time, learning its pattern. Then he understood what he had to do. Persistence hunting, the oldest human hunting technique. He picked up a rock and threw it far to his left. The creature's head snapped toward the sound. It charged in that direction, powerful and fast. Ran forward while it was distracted. He didn't run fast, just steady. When the creature returned to its patrol route, hid. Then he did it again. Threw another rock, moved forward while it investigated. Again and again, for hours. Each time the creature had to run full speed to check the disturbance. Each time it came back slightly more tired. Was tired too, exhausted beyond measure. But he kept his pace steady, never stopping, never resting for long. This is what humans did. They didn't sprint like predators. They just kept going, kept moving until the prey couldn't run anymore. Finally, after 6 hours of this, the creature was panting heavily. It moved slower, its legs shaking with exhaustion. When through the next rock, it barely lifted its head to look. Walked calmly past it, grabbed the 3rd honor marker from its post, and walked away. The creature watched him go, but didn't have the energy to chase. In the observation room, there was complete silence. He just walked past it, someone said in disbelief. He ran it to exhaustion, another alien whispered. I've heard of this, ancient Earth hunting technique. They would chase prey for days until it couldn't run anymore. Stared at the screen, his face unreadable. This wasn't supposed to happen. The human was supposed to fail, supposed to die or give up. Stood up from his seat. Without a word to anyone, he left the observation room. Made his way back to the entrance. He had all 3 markers. He had survived 48 hours. He had 1. But he was finished. His legs barely worked. His vision was blurring. He stumbled more than he walked. The exit door was in sight when his legs finally gave out. Fell to his knees, then to his hands. He couldn't go any further. The door opened anyway. Guards rushed in and Minu right behind them. They found collapsed on the ground, the 3 honor markers clutched in his hand. Get medical here now, shouted. They carried out of the crowd that had gathered to watch his failure now watched in stunned silence as the small human was rushed to the medical bay. Drifted in and out of consciousness. He heard voices, felt hands working on him, saw lights passing overhead. Then darkness took him. When he woke, he was in a medical bed. His body was bandaged, and an IV drip fed fluids into his arm. He tried to sit up, but gentle hands pushed him back down. "Rest," said. She was sitting beside his bed, her eyes red like she'd been crying. "You did it. You actually did it." "The markers," his voice was rough. "Right here," Minyu held them up. "All three, you completed the trial." Closed his eyes in relief. It was over. He had survived. "You have a visitor," said quietly, "if you're up for it." Before could answer, the door opened. A massive figure entered the room, and's breath caught. It was but not. This one was larger, older, with scars covering his scales. His presence filled the entire room. "Leave us," the said. It wasn't a request. And Minyu looked at with concern, but he nodded. They left, closing the door behind them. The moved closer. "I am of the people." Tried to sit up again, but gestured for him to stay down. "You do not know me," continued, "but I have been watching you since you arrived on this station. I watched you face insults with dignity. I watched you accept an impossible trial, and I watched you survive." "I got lucky," he said. "No," his voice was firm. "Luck does not last 48 hours. What you did in that I have seen only once before, in myself." He sat down in a chair that creaked under his weight. "Many years ago I was young and foolish. I was hunting on a death world when my ship crashed. I was alone, injured with no weapons. For 3 months I survived. Not through strength or speed, but through thinking, through adapting, through refusing to give up." Looked at his own hands. "When I was finally rescued, I was no longer the same. I had learned that true hunters do not rely on strength alone. They use everything, their minds, their patience, their will to survive." He looked at, "You hunt as I hunt. You think, you adapt, you endure. These are the marks of a true hunter." Pulled out a knife, sharp and ceremonial. Before could react, the cut his own palm, dark blood welling up. Then he reached for his hand. "What are you doing?" asked. "Honoring you." Cut's palm, just a small cut. Then he pressed their hands together, mixing their blood. "You are in, brother of the hunt. No has granted this title to an outsider in 600 cycles, but you have earned it." Stared at their joined hands, not quite believing what was happening. Released his hand and stood. "Rest now, brother. When you have recovered, we will speak more. You and I have much to discuss about the true nature of strength." He left the room, leaving alone with his thoughts and a bleeding palm that meant everything had changed. The news spread through Nexus Prime like fire. The human had survived the trial of shadows. More than that, they had declared him in, brother of the hunt. When was finally released from medical care 2 days later, everything had changed. Aliens who had mocked him before now nodded with respect as he passed. Merchants who had refused to meet with him now requested appointments. Even the station guards treated him differently. But the biggest change was waiting outside the medical bay when emerged. The large face was twisted with anger and humiliation. "This is wrong," said, his voice shaking. "You cannot be in. You won through tricks and cowardice, not true hunting skill." Met his eyes calmly. "I won by using the skills I have. Isn't that what hunting is about? Using what you have to survive." "You dishonor our traditions." Stepped forward, looming over. "I challenge this decision. This cannot stand." "Then challenge me directly." The voice came from behind, stepped out of the shadows, his face calm but his eyes hard. "Is under my protection now. To insult him is to insult me." Turned. "I mean no disrespect to you, but this human." "Completed the trial of shadows," interrupted. "Something you have never done." The hallway went silent. Other who had gathered to watch looked shocked. "The trial is a sacred rite," continued. "Any may attempt it, yet you have not. Why is that?" His mouth opened and closed. I have not needed to prove myself. My record speaks." "Then perhaps you should attempt it now," said quietly. "Prove that you are superior to this human you despise so much. 48 hours in the 3 markers. the same trial faced. Everyone waited for response. The large looked around, seeing all the eyes on him. His pride warred with his fear, and fear won. That is not necessary, said, his voice smaller now. I have other duties. As I thought, his voice carried disappointment. You would insult someone who has done what you dare not attempt. This is not the way, this is cowardice. His face went dark with shame. Without another word, he turned and walked away quickly. The other watched him go and could see the disgust in their faces. Turn 2, come, the council wishes to speak with you. The council chamber was a large circular room with seats arranged in tiers. Representatives from dozens of species sat in those seats, all watching as entered with at his side. Was there too, standing in a corner, his eyes fixed on the floor. The council is now in session, a tall alien with blue skin announced. We are here to discuss the matter of human trade rights and the recent developments regarding merchant. Before anyone could continue, the door opened again. A human woman entered, wearing formal diplomatic robes. She was older, perhaps 50, with sharp eyes and a confident walk. Ambassador, the blue alien acknowledged. We were not expecting you. I came as soon as I heard, said. She nodded to with a small smile before taking a seat in the human section. Please, continue. The blue alien looked uncomfortable. Very well. Merchant, you have completed the trial of shadows and been named in by. This is unprecedented. The council must decide what this means for human relations going forward. If I may speak, said. Please. Stood and addressed the council. His voice was steady, stronger than it had been before the trial. For too long, humans have been seen as weak because we're small, because we don't have scales or claws or natural armor, but strength comes in many forms. He gestured to, he understands this. He knows that humans survived on Earth not by being the strongest or fastest, but by being smart, by adapting, by never giving up. Walk to the center of the chamber. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Do you know what that means? It means we would chase prey for days, not fast, just steady. We would track animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. We can run longer than almost any creature on Earth. We can go without water for days. We can survive injuries that would kill other species. He looked around at the council members. You see our small size and think we're weak, but we're not. We're survivors, and that makes us valuable partners, not liabilities. Ambassador stood up. Well said, Merchant. I would add that Earth's history shows what humans can do when we're given a chance. We went from simple tools to space travel in just 10,000 years. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. We're still here, still growing, still learning. One of the council members, a reptilian creature similar to spoke up. These are fine words, but what does this mean in practical terms? What can humans offer us? Before or could answer stood. The entire chamber fell silent. The rarely spoke in council, and when he did, everyone listened. I will tell you what humans can offer, said. Knowledge, perspective, endurance. They see problems differently than we do. They solve them in ways we would never consider. He looked at. This human survived my people's most sacred trial using methods no would have thought of. That alone proves their value. Turned to address the whole council. I propose a new arrangement. Full trading rights for humans in this sector. But more than that, I propose a cultural exchange. Let learn from humans and humans learn from. Let us share knowledge, techniques, and perspectives. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some aliens nodded in agreement. Others looked skeptical, but no one could argue with logic. I second this proposal, said quickly. The vote took an hour, but when it was done, the result was clear. Humans would be granted full trading rights. The cultural exchange would begin immediately. As the council dispersed, slipped out without speaking to anyone. His position on the station was finished. Word would spread about his refusal to take the trial and the valued courage above all else. found himself surrounded by well-wishers, both human and alien, hugged him tightly. Minyu shook his hand. Even Sola appeared, smiling shyly. "Thank you," said to her quietly, "for the data. You saved my life." "You saved more than that," Sola replied. "You changed everything for all of us." Later that evening, stood in his quarters looking out at the stars again. He thought about how much had changed in just a few days. He had come here a merchant, dismissed and ridiculed. Now he was brother of the hunt, and humanity had a future in this sector. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. It was. "May I enter?" he asked. "Of course." Came in carrying a long package wrapped in cloth. "I have a gift for you, brother." He unwrapped it to reveal a blade, beautiful and deadly. It was made from some kind of dark metal, with engravings along the blade that glowed faintly. "This is a hunting blade," explained. "It has been in my family for generations. I give it to you now as a symbol of our bond and our new alliance." Took the blade carefully. It was surprisingly light despite its size. "I don't know what to say, this is too much." "It is exactly enough," said. "You have earned this and more, but I have another proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" "In 3 months a joint expedition will launch, and human, exploring new worlds together. I want you to lead it with me. Together we will show the galaxy what our peoples can accomplish." Looked at the blade in his hands, then at, a few weeks ago he would have thought this impossible. Now it felt right. "I accept," he said. Smiled, showing his teeth, but this time it was genuine warmth, not a threat. "Good, we have much to prepare." 3 months later, the expedition ship launched from Nexus Prime. It was crewed by both and humans, species that had once distrusted each other now working side by side. On the bridge, stood next to, watching the stars streak past as they entered faster than light travel. "Where do you think we'll go first?" asked. "Somewhere challenging," replied. "Somewhere that will test both our kinds. That is where the best hunting is found." Smiled. "Sounds perfect." As the ship journeyed deeper into unexplored space, word of the alliance spread throughout the galaxy. The Compact of Brothers, they called it. The agreement between the smallest species and one of the largest, proving that strength came in many forms. Other species began to reconsider their views of humanity. If they respected humans, perhaps there was more to these small creatures than met the eye. And on a small blue planet far behind them, Earth received the news with celebration. Their people had proven themselves among the stars. They had earned their place not through military might or technological superiority, but through the same qualities that had helped humans survive for hundreds of thousands of years. Intelligence, adaptability, endurance, and the absolute refusal to give up. On the expedition ship turned to, "I have a question for you, brother." "What is it?" "When you were at your most exhausted, when you could barely stand, what kept you going?" Thought about it for a moment. "I kept thinking about something my grandfather told me when I was young. He said that humans might not be the biggest or the strongest, but we have one advantage that nothing can take away from us." "What advantage is that?" Smiled. "We've been adapting for 300,000 years. We're just getting started." Laughed, a deep booming sound that echoed through the bridge. "Then let us see what we can accomplish together. You and I, let us show the galaxy what happens when 2 hunter species become brothers." The ship flew on, carrying them toward new worlds, new challenges, and a future where humanity would never again be ridiculed or dismissed. They had earned their place among the stars, and they were just getting started.